If you're looking for something a little different for a family day out in the West Midlands, this Transport Museum offers bus rides, miniature trains, and plenty to explore. But is it actually worth visiting with young children? In this video, I'll be taking you around the Transport Museum Wythall to show you what there is to see and do, what it's like for families, and whether it's actually worth a visit. Now let's start with the vehicles, as that's really what the Transport Museum Wythall is best known for. It focuses mainly on buses from around the West Midlands, many of which have been lovingly restored by volunteers over the years. When you arrive, you pay for your tickets in a small cabin at the edge of the car park. You're then given a leaflet with a map and some information, along with a vintage style admission ticket, which actually makes a really nice little keepsake. We were also greeted by a volunteer who was handing out stickers for the children and explaining where to start, when the buses were running, and a few things to look out for. It felt like a really welcoming introduction, rather than just being left to figure everything out yourself. Most of the vehicles are housed across 3 large warehouse-style buildings. Alongside the buses, there are also a few old fire engines, coaches, and even a collection of milk floats, which was something a bit different. Each vehicle has an information panel nearby, and there are plenty of extra displays if you enjoy taking your time and reading more about the history. One thing I personally really liked was the old advertising posters about travelling by bus. They added a nice bit of character. When we visited on a Saturday during half term, the bus rides were running roughly every hour. These are included in your admission price, and you can go on them as many times as you like during your visit. On our visit, we rode a vintage red double-decker, which my little one really enjoyed. The route goes up towards the Maypole area and then back again, and it's about a 20-minute round trip. It's also worth noting that you can actually pick the bus up near the Sainsbury's in Maypole and travel to the museum that way. And on certain event days, they run a service from Birmingham city centre as well. For us, the bus ride was a really nice break during the visit, especially with a toddler, and something that made the day feel a bit more interactive. I was actually really surprised by how much there was for children to do here. Of course, there are plenty of buses to explore, and in some of them, children can sit in the driver's seat, which is always a big hit. There's also an old fire engine where they can ring the bell and try on firefighter hats, which is great for a bit of role play. There's also a small play shed filled with toys, which is handy if you want to grab a drink from the cafe and take a few minutes while the kids stay entertained. But that's not all. They also have a model railway set up in its own little building with buttons to press and a can you find activity sheet, which adds a bit more interaction. And then there's the miniature steam train that offers rides for £2 per person, which is a really lovely extra. I would just recommend checking in advance when it is running, as it's not available all year round. Right next to that, there's an outdoor picnic area with benches, some outdoor toys, and even a milk float that the children can climb on and draw on with chalk, which adds a nice creative element to the visit. Moving on to the facilities, this was actually another area that really impressed me. There's a dedicated mother and baby space set in a small private cabin. Inside there's a chair, changing facilities, and even a few books. And it's even large enough to fit a pram in as well. I thought this was a really thoughtful touch. There's also an additional baby changing station located within the accessible toilet. All of the main toilet facilities are situated next to the café, which makes things easy to find. On the day we visited, there was also a burger van set up outside, which is also a good option if you want something a bit more substantial than the lighter bites available in the cafe. We chose to sit in the cafe for a while, and it was quite nice just watching all the Bond cars appear. The prices were very reasonable too, which is always a bonus. To get to the gift shop, you will need to walk through the cafe. It is definitely more geared towards collectors and enthusiasts. There are a lot of memorabilia, including old bus tickets and timetables, but there is also a small selection of toys and more typical gift shop items for children, as well as a range of model buses at different price points. We couldn't leave without picking up a little bus for our toddler. Parking is free, but I would recommend arriving earlier in the day if you can, as the car park isn't huge and it did fill up quite quickly when we visited. In terms of accessibility, most of the site is fairly easy to navigate with a pushchair or a wheelchair. The only limitation really was getting on and off the older buses. The layout is generally good, although we did have to double back slightly when crossing over the railway bridge. The museum is only open on weekends, Wednesdays during school holidays, and on bank holiday Mondays, so it is worth checking ahead before you visit. In terms of cost, there are currently two pricing options depending on when you visit. On general admission days, tickets are £8 for adults and £4 for children, with under fives going free, which is great if you're visiting with little ones. They also run special event days throughout the year, often in collaboration with other groups like the Classic Cars, Bristol Buses, and Emergency Services. These are a bit more expensive, at £12 for adults and £6 for children, but again, under fives are still free. The only additional cost to factor in would be the miniature train rides, which are £2 per person if you choose to do them. We visited on a general admission day and spent a good couple of hours here. We probably could have stayed a lot longer, but we ended up leaving around our toddler's nap time. Overall, I think this is a really good option for a day out with younger children, especially if they're into buses, vehicles, or anything like that. One thing I would say is that it's probably better suited to milder or warmer days, as there isn't a huge amount of shelter from the cold. But considering the price, the amount there is to do, and how interactive it is, it does feel like really good value for money. And for us, it's definitely somewhere we'd come back to. And as always, I hope this helps you make a considered choice for your next UK adventure.